Okay, it's recording now. It's 1:02. Oh, we lost one. How do you lose somebody at the beginning of a meeting? That's probably not a good sign. So now we're down to 19. So let me give one more minute in case we need to. Oh, I gotta put a check.
Ronnie?
Yes.
It's Mary. I just put a question in the chat that's not related to this about the Spanish version of the application. It's on the website, but it doesn't have the last page. And I'm wondering.
Okay.
Here we go.
And this is the emergency application?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome. I got to tell you, it's good to hear you, but I really do miss that little Mickey Mouse voice that you were pulling off last time. That was quite clever.
I know, I tried to,
I wish you,
but I can't.
I wish you could have heard it. It was really great. Okay, so those of you that are on the phone, let's see, there's 20 of us, and I'm not sure that we're going to be able to introduce ourselves, but I'm going to show you this document real quick. Oh, no, I'm not, because I didn't have it up, but I'm going to find it real quick to see if the information I have is correct as far as who has a hybrid CPR and first aid and who doesn't. So here it is. This is the other day in the chat box, we had asked a group of CCR&R directors to put in the chat box if they had it or not, and if they had a hybrid or not. If you see that your CCR&R on here is not correct, where I have your number and that yes or no, that you have a hybrid first aid CPR and this is your region and that's your director. If it is incorrect, please add it in the chat box for me so that I can correct that later. I'd appreciate it. Okay, so this is unusual for us to actually have two parts of the CPR first aid training that count. Typically, the online portion doesn't count, and it really gets added when they complete the hands-on portion. So we're going to, for the emergency process, while hands-on training can't occur right now, or face-to-face training for that fact, the Early Learning Division has decided that the online first aid and CPR is not a bad option when you consider that the other option is nothing, right? Do you all agree with that? Thanks. And so, so at this point, we're going to be allowing this, and individuals have access to other online trainings. We had provided a document that's on our website. Let me see if I could get it real quick. I have it here. That's on our website that has other options. And again, we talked about trying to keep those options to statewide. We didn't want to put an option that was only in one region and not available to everybody else. So we tried to create these that were for everybody. We did find a Spanish one as well, and the price was pretty reasonable for that as well. So we were thrilled with that. And then, so here's some other options that have been in the ORO training calendar before, not the training calendar, that has been submitted to the Oregon Registry, and they passed the test, or is it the smell test? And so they put their approval on it. So we knew that those were good and safe. So we went through that process. So we chose those. And that was just a few. Of course, if they come back with something else, as long as the Oregon Registry has approved of that process, and it'll go in. So at the very top, we put this here option, the ORO training calendar, and we told them to search by your county if they can find one. So a participant's going to go into the Oregon Registry to search, and the Oregon Registry training calendar, and search by their county to see if a hybrid is up as an option. But since you can't really have a date on it, it kind of throws things off a little bit. So we want to talk about how could this happen? And of course, there's multiple ways for this to happen because of a lot of things about ORO has options. You can do this, or you can do that. You're trying to meet different needs. You know, you can mail it in, you can upload it. You just have different ways of approaching it. So the OCCD team and myself talked about this and said, what could be an option? How could this work to show the early learning educator that they have completed that training, so that they can show it in their ORO account that they had completed the online portion, and yet you have a list of all those individuals that had completed the online portion that need more, that need the hands-on later. So I think at this point, we want to go into the ORO training calendar and kind of start from there, unless somebody has questions before we get to that point. Go ahead and unmute yourselves, and then we'll hear. Or should I be reading the chat box?
Ronnie, this is Christine. I think a lot of people are referring to the same question, but what is the messaging at this point for providers that don't speak English as their first language?
Thank you, Christine. That's great. The message is this, is that you have a barrier of any kind. So it's not just language. It could be access to technology, the computer, knowing how to get there. Because even if we have a Spanish one, doesn't mean that because you're a Spanish speaker that you no longer have a barrier, right? You still could have a barrier to getting this completed. They need to work with their licensing specialist. And their licensing specialist will work with them through an exception process. They'll put it into CRIS. They'll actually do the little formal process to show that they have been approved of an exception, and they'll put it in CRIS, and they put a date stamp, sort of a timer on it, so that by a certain date, that exception will go away and this will be fixed. Does that make sense?
Ronnie, this is Carmen. Can I just, sorry, Christine, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Carmen.
I just want to repeat that to make sure that we're on the same page. So in the past, the R&Rs have been responsible for filling out that waiver form. At this point, we are not doing that during this emergency time, and the licensors are doing that entire process. Is that right?
I'm talking about an exception form.
Yep.
The exception.
We usually do the exception form for them to show, and then they carry on with that.
That's different.
Okay.
So we're not doing that now. Now just the licensor needs to deal with the exception for CPR.
Okay, so this here is, I'm going to go back and check on this because I had no idea that you were doing anything with an exception form. That, as far as I've known, is a licensing formal process. Yes, Karen?
So we were doing it for DHS listed providers, not for regulated providers.
Oh, okay, that makes sense, because I'm going, that's a licensing process. That'd be like you don't suspend facilities either, do you? I was just kind of wondering, what is that process? Exactly. Okay, so, but you still want to know, do you need to do that for DHS, right? You still want to know that?
Yes.
Okay, I'll check
Yes,
on
please.
that. I don't know about that. But as far as the licensing process, the legality there, if anybody is having any barrier right now, they need to contact their licensing specialist and say, you know, whatever the barrier is, I don't have access to technology. I don't know how to use a computer. It's not available in my language of Vietnamese. I don't, you know, whatever the barrier is. And the licensing specialist is going to say, yeah, you're right, that's the barrier. And there's nothing built for it within this emergency and the emergency things that are happening right now to get past that. So for now, we're going to give you the exception. And so that's not going to be hard to get or anything, but they do want it documented, that a provider wants it documented that they had a barrier and that they talked to the Office of Child Care about it, and the Office of Child Care wants the evidence that, yeah, they had this conversation and there was a barrier. So it's not going to be like hard to get or something. They do just need to work with it. Okay, does that satisfy that answer? Okay, thank you.
Ronnie,
Okay,
I have
but keep
another
them
question.
coming. Yes.
Ronnie, this is Lynette. And so I have another question on the form. So on the list of website online options, there's a fee column. So that fee is what's charged by the organization to get that online piece. How do we communicate that there would be an additional fee for them to come in and do the skills part? Or do we not put a fee out there and just leave it varies by organization?
So I think when we were originally thinking this up during the flood of emergency work, I didn't imagine that you would be able to do the hands-on if they didn't have your company's online training. But and I'm still kind of a little murky about that. I know somebody had said, yeah, we can do the hands-on portion, and somebody else said, no, I don't think that you can. But if you can, and if they call you to say, I need to do the hands-on, then you're going to tell them what your policy is. So you're going to say, you know, you need to do this online training, and then after you do that, you come in to do the hands-on or whatever your policy is, if they come to you to do that portion.
But I think the question,
resource list just for us internally, it's not something that's being published out to the emergency child care programs?
it's being sent to providers. I received it from a provider yesterday.
Yeah, and this is on our website.
Okay, so it is difficult then, because we don't all have the ability to do the hands-on portion for all of these different providers of first aid and CPR.
Yeah, the form needs to say, wait, Ronnie, so the form needs to say, like, these classes are, like, will only work for now. Then if they choose something, one of these things on here, then they're going to have to pay for that and then pay again to take the full version with us.
Exactly, and not every CCR&R offers a hybrid, so they have no choice but to take something else.
No, right. But then even in cases where they, like, people need to understand that even in places where they do have the hybrid available, that this isn't the first part of the hybrid. They can't take this and then do the second part later. So instead of choosing, like, if you're in a place where we do have hybrid, you should not choose one of those. You should choose.
And I think up here, we said if you're working in a licensed child care setting, you should first try to register for a hybrid adult, infant, and child CPR class through the ORO Training Calendar. Online only CPR and training will be allowed only during the Oregon state of emergency. But if their CCR&R does not have one, if they go to their county and there's not one listed, then they have to go to another option. And that was the reason why
they're going to pay twice.
Because it appears that that's what's going to happen. And some of them are going to be closed and they're not operating at all right now. Some are going to be open and they need the choice. And if their CCR&R doesn't have it, they have no choice but to take something else. Or they can say, or they can call their licensor and say, my CCR&R doesn't have it. I don't think that they're going to get a waiver for that or an exception. They're going to probably have to, they're going to say, well, you have other choices. Yeah, and that's going to be a bummer. But you need it in order to do this. And if those that are operating as emergency childcare doesn't mean that they are expired right now or that they don't have CPR first aid. So some of them are going to be fine till this is over because they already have a current one. We'll have to see the status. But yeah, I totally felt that. That was the reason why we're trying to do this, to avoid that. So Andrew, are you ready for me to turn this over to you? So I am going to make Andrew the presenter, and he's going to bring us into the ORO training calendar. And while he's doing that, I'm going to make sure I pull everything out of the chat that I need to answer or address and come back to. So please keep that coming. Andrew, let's see. Andrew, you do have sound, right? Because I'm just hearing you do this. And
yeah, I just unmuted myself. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Okay. Okay, and I am going to get to see the inside of the ORO training calendar, which you guys get to see, because that's been a mystery and a black hole to me. And I've been making up all kinds of stuff about how it operates, and it doesn't. So I'm anxious to see it. But keep it coming in chat box. I'm going to be pulling that out while he's showing. Andrew, you have it, right?
Oh, I'm trying to find it. It's popping windows up. I've never done this before. All right. We should have probably tested this before we did it, Ronnie. I'm getting security problems. Let's see.
Security problems.
Oh, on my computer. All right.
Yeah, I know. And I'm thinking, is it trying to, oh, I see something.
So now you can see it, right?
Yes.
All right. So I can't really see anybody, so I'm not going to be able to see visual clues from people on their video. So definitely unmute yourself and speak up if you have questions as I'm going through this process. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the calendar's registration manage page. So these are all the events that we have set up for the Oregon Center for Career Development at this point. You'll notice at the top we have two just examples for right now, and then I'll go through how we created these in just a minute. But you'll notice that they're both online CPR and First Aid temporary certification, which is the title that we're going to be using for all of these verified CPRs and First Aids. Up here, I've got a second one. It's an open event. Its location is web-based, and I just grabbed a location that Multnomah County had put up, but the important thing is that it's web-based up here. And the second one is a held event that's private. So those are kind of key to the way that this rather inelegant solution is going to work. So the idea is that the private event is the one that we would put all of the registrations on for people that are finishing the online portion. And I understand that in the cases of the hybrid events that the R&Rs are typically getting notified of when providers are completing the online portion. So hopefully that is the case, and then you'll be able to use that notification to go in and put a registration on the private event. The public event, notice also that the dates are a range of something that's in the near past going forward. I just chose April 30th since that's approximately when this emergency may end. So that enables the event to be shown publicly on the calendar for anybody that's coming and searching by their county to see if there is a CPR option. So any questions at all at this point?
Andrew, this is Jenna. Did I see that you guys are going to make a an example one of these for us?
What we have done is we have created the template for you. So the template is going to be in there. So when you schedule your first event, I mean, we could go in and do the first event for you, the private events, but the template is there. And so as long as you just mark it as a private event, and then as soon as it gets published, mark it as held, then it'll be there for your use. Does that answer your question, Jenna?
So you're doing, is there a template for both the public one and the private one?
There's a template, a single template, and it can be used for both.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
So I'm just
perfect.
So that's how you would do it. Just go in and schedule. You can mark it held right off the bat. The language option, you could mark it as all languages, and then this, in the case of the public one, and then it would just show up in whatever language the user has got their browser set to. I don't know, each SDA has probably got a different use case, so I just keep that in mind. You might want to publish a public event for each language. That's up to you, but I would recommend at least getting one up there with the date range. So,
Andrew, as far as we know, there's no hybrid in any other language that any of the SDAs are using.
Okay, good. Well, not good, but good to know.
Not good.
Not good. So I'm just putting in the range so that it will show up. You could put location to be announced, or I would recommend doing the online option that I mentioned. So sorry, location doesn't matter for the private one, obviously, because you're the only ones that are going to be looking at it. You could put in the contact information that's relevant, and I recommend putting something in the additional information that's calling out the arrangement of you're going to be going to a website, you're going to take this online training, and then we will verify it for you upon completion. If you do not have one of these hybrid solutions that the notice is being sent, then I would definitely recommend putting some information in there so that the providers know that they're going to have to send you a hybrid or online completion documentation so that you can verify it or upload it directly to ORO.
Andrew?
Yes.
This is Jessica. This might be a stupid question, but I'm wondering, why would we do a private event? Is that just because, are you thinking some SDAs would not want people to be able to find it in the calendar? Or I just want to know the rationale behind that.
Sure, it's not a stupid question at all. It is because we're going to use that private event to put all registrations on, so that you have a central place that anybody that's completing the online piece, you'll be able to verify it into ORO, verify the hours, and later, if you need it, you'll be able to export the whole roster and have a list of all the names and contact information of these individuals in case you need to reach out to them and say, hey, now it's time to come in and do the hands-on portion so that we don't have to disapprove your online CPR. Does that make sense? And we'll kind of walk through that here in a second.
Yeah, so basically it's like our master list. That's where we would keep everybody who's completed it during this time. That makes total sense. Thank you for clarifying.
Exactly. Oops. Okay. So
Andrew, will there be something that the public will see?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have to do at least two. We do one that's private and one that's public. And you can do more than one public if you want. Oh, I didn't get a trainer.
And the private one would also have the range of dates?
The private one
Or just a date?
The private one will have a date, but it'll matter on the completion date as we move forward, and you'll see that in just a second. All right, so we've got our, that was the, which one was that? That was the, oh man. That was an open one. Okay, public one. So notice I just went through and did the public one. I'm not going to go through and do the private one because it's the same process except for you just mark it as private. But when the provider is viewing it online, once it gets published, they're going to see essentially what you see right here, right? They're going to see something that's from March 25th until April 30th. They're going to see that it's web-based and that it is open, and they would be able to contact you and get registered for it. So then when they do see that and they contact you, you would instead be registering them under this training, the bottom private training. So we'll put all the registrations on the one like we just talked about. I don't know.
Andrew, this is Jessica again, sorry. Just to be clear that I heard you correctly, we're only going to have one private event, but we can have multiple public events if we are scheduling more than one of these options, correct?
Yeah, you can have multiple publics. You can also have multiple privates if you want. It kind of depends on how you want to organize it. Like I could see if you have multiple counties in your SDA, you might want to have one private event for everybody that's in one county and a second one for everybody that's in the second county. So that's kind of your decision organizationally. It's just important that you always use that same template and that you just kind of do something consistently for your organization. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. So I just registered the training account, and notice I already had 2 people registered for this private event, and one of them already had their hours verified. I point that out because we're going to be using this private event to modify the completion date for every person that you're going to be verifying hours for. So notice right now it's at March 22nd completion date. In another tab I have the private events already in a different tab. Notice its completion date is March 22nd, just like on the other tab. I'm going to change it to March 23rd. Save the event, and then flip back and verify the person's hours that I just got the completion documentation or notice from the hybrid online training that they'd completed it on the 23rd. So notice I changed the date from the 22nd to the 23rd so that when I verify training accounts hours, then that completion date will be the 23rd. Does that make sense?
So Andrew, do you do that for each person or each batch of individuals depending on their completion date?
Yep.
So you can have multiple people in the same
Exactly.
in the same class, but okay.
Yeah, so you could get a group of 10, throw them all in the registration, and then flip over to the hours, or sorry, flip over to the event, modify the event date to match the completion date of those 10 people, and then verify all 10 at once.
Can I, maybe this is a silly thought, but since this only counts provisionally, why does it matter if each person's date of completion is exact? Like, Like we're about to do, 200 of these. Is there any reason why you can't just make an event that's like May 1st to May 8th, and then everyone is in there who did it in that time? Like May 8th is like their date, and then the next group of people, May 15th is their date.
What do you think, Ronnie?
Well,
I mean, I generally like my data to be very clean, but like this is a lot, and it's not even gonna count later.
Yeah, it's eventually going to get disapproved if they don't go through the hands-on portion.
Right, and it's not going to matter the date that they took it, because it's really going to be 60 days after the state of emergency is over. That's kind of like the important date, not really from the date they took it. And from what I was understanding from Jenna and Carmen the other day, it sounds like the companies that you work with in the hybrid process actually gives you a batch of names like once a week or once every 2 weeks of the individuals that had completed the training. Is it every week, Jenna?
Ronnie, we do it ourselves, so we just have to go in and look at who's completed it. Nobody's sending us anything. We just go and look at as people complete. The only thing that I want to say about the date mattering is it may matter if they're expiring, and if we're entering in past when they've expired.
Because I was thinking, and I don't know, I don't see a significance for licensing right now, but I was thinking that if you did it just once a week from that. So Carmen, does your company send you a batch or a list of people who have completed it?
Well, not normally, because we don't normally need to know that. But in our new system we're talking about, we have to decide how often we want to receive that information. It's fine. We can mark the exact date that people did it. It's just a really high volume of clicking in terms of stop time.
And I'm also wondering,
200 people.
Yeah. And Carmen, it's a good question. I'm also wondering about the issue of some of your companies that you work with have a timeline between the date they took that online training to the time that they finish that, the hands-on portion. Karen Prow, who's not in today, is she in? Karen.
I'm here.
Oh, hey, Karen. Karen, did you find out anything different? Karen learned that the company that she works with wants them to finish the hands-on portion at least 90 days after they complete the hands-on training. Did you find out, Karen, if there was any leniency on that?
So Denise Hudson from our office is also on this call, and she had done some research into it, contacted Medic, and asked if there was going to be any leniency. And it sounded like Medic told her they're having conversations about that, but that at this point it's the 90 days, and that if they decide to extend it out further, that a notice will come to all instructors and centers, meaning training centers that are licensed with Medic.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. That's nice.
So I was just thinking that if the company is going off of in some way, even if they extend it to 120 days or whatever, they're going from a particular date that you might also want to be aware of as well. Because I was just, one of my
We'll have that in our Medic system, though. We can track that in our Medic system. So we have a portal where we can track all of that. So for us, we won't lose track of that.
Okay. Good job. Okay.
Andrew,
did we answer the question?
So Medic just extended dates for instructors as well, like 4 months out. So I can't imagine that they're not also going to give more leniency on completion.
So says Mary. Did we answer that question or not? I'm not quite sure. I know we discussed it. Not sure, Andrew.
I'm not sure either. I would like to noodle it myself, but it may not matter.
I still want to go back to that generic date of 1/1/1900.
That's a magical date in ORO. You can't reuse that.
I know. I know.
Okay. Maybe we can come back to that or have a little more discussion on the completion dates. It may not matter. You all might be right. Maybe we don't have to flip back and forth and change that completion date. It could just be the fateful date of 3/20 that we use, and that could be the new magic date. But I want to point out real quick that we do also have, if you needed, a single participant option. So for those of you that are familiar with the single participant workflow, you can register a person, and I've added in, I hope it's there, there it is, the same temporary certification title. So if you need to just do a one-off, you can do it that way. And then I guess the final thing I wanted to bring your attention to, I'm still kind of working on this as an option, but okay, ignore this. For the providers and viewing the calendar, we have this alert messaging option that, so I just put in something up here that says it kind of calls it out just to try and bring their attention to it. The problem with it, and the reason I don't want to use it immediately, is that staff are also seeing that, and it gets very annoying as you're navigating through the site. So I'm going to try and get it fixed and working so that only the public sees it, maybe only on this homepage, or see, because it kind of gets in the way. You have to click to get it away to be able to navigate. So, which is fine one time, but every time you reload the page, it comes back. And you have to get rid of it again. So that is a possible option, and you might see it appear later. Does anybody have any questions on any of this before I mute myself and go silent?
This is Jessica again. Sorry for so many questions. I don't get the completion date part. Maybe because I didn't know that that was a thing, that you could do different completion dates for different people within the same training. But I'm not quite understanding. So if we are going to move forward with that, if you could go over that again, I would appreciate it if we have time.
Sure. Okay. So I guess the point is that here we are registering people. Which one did I not verify? I thought I verified a training account. Yeah. Okay, so these two people took the training, we'll just say March 20th. They've already had their hours verified. This person comes in and takes the online training. All right, let me get rid of this site message real quick. This person comes in and takes the training on the 25th. And so, or you may have a group of people that take the training on the 25th. If the completion date matters, and that's yet to be fully decided, we would need to indicate that this person did complete it on the 25th. So that's where we would want to go to the event and where to go? We'd want to go to the private event and edit it. Change the date to be whatever the person completed. So in this case, we're saying the 25th. So we change that date to the 25th. flip back to the registration, and when I verify this one, it's going to be verified with the completion date of the 25th. So record the hours, verify the hours. Oops.
And so once that is verified, the 25th would show for that individual. Now, when we go back and say another person, let's say there was somebody else in there and they didn't do it until the 27th, when we change that in there, it doesn't change on the other ones because they've already been verified, correct?
Exactly. Yep. And then
Perfect.
it will
Okay,
only
thank
change for the future ones. So you can keep pushing that date out, pushing it out and verifying more people, and they all get their correct completion dates. Again.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I never knew that you could do that. So that is where the disconnect was. So thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, it usually doesn't work this way. I mean, we're just getting creative. And like I said, it's not completely elegant, but it will work. Any other questions?
This is Jennifer. I have a quick question. Can I add more than one county to the private event so that I can keep track of all the counties in my SDA on one site instead of having multiple people do it?
The county field is really for the public to see. So for the private event, it wouldn't matter what county you've got indicated if you're lumping them all into one. So perfect. You could, yeah. I'm still thinking through some of the future effects of this, but there are going to be some reporting consequences to this approach. So if anybody's thinking about that, we're going to have like a massive event on our reports that have hundreds of people possibly. And I think that as we're analyzing that as data, we just are going to have to take it with a grain of salt. And same goes with the duplicate, if you will, hands-on events that they'll later be taking. So I'm thinking about it, but if anybody has any feedback or questions on that, feel free to email me or ask away right now too.
Is this going to mess up our annual workforce report, or is this, since this is training, it might be more towards the reports that TRI works with?
It's going to be more about the reports that TRI works with.
Okay.
So Sherry and I can talk about that as we funnel the data over. But you all know the
so
data.
Andrew,
too,
what I understand you to say is if we did it like Jennifer suggested and just have our private group and put all of our counties in there, we're losing county specific data and the ability to report on that. Is that correct?
For this online training one, yes. But the thought will be that you'll eventually get it back with the hands-on one as people take that.
I'm so glad you're thinking about that. That's kind of important. Yeah, because we use that data for all kinds of stuff.
Hey, Andrew, this is Melinda with SDA 7. So if we already do a hybrid, do I still need to put in the two, the private and the public, or can I just do public, or how does that work?
You would need to do the private one for the cases of people that are taking only the online portion and are needing it for either licensing and or emergency care purposes right now.
Okay.
Because that's the only way that's the only way we can get it verified and showing up in ORO so that the specialists and or TRI can see that as they're reviewing qualifications.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Okay. Any last questions for Andrew about this process? Okay.
All righty, I'm going to give you back the screen, Ronnie. and I'm going to go on mute. Bye all. Thank you. Stay well.
Thank you. Don't go far, Andrew. We're watching you. Okay. Thank you. So I also wanted to say, and I don't want to be an alarmist here, but I'm also realizing that Karen had mentioned that I think like schools were closed on a Friday, and she got a notice on that she had to cancel her class on Saturday, which had like 35 people in it, something like that. Karen, am I making that up? It was she had a large group that was going to be like that next day. I know Christina talked about having to cancel a class for 150 people. And so that means that all those people, you already have a backlog of people that need to get into the hands-on class, right? At some point. So, and I'm also thinking that depending on how long this is, if we're another month or two out for this state of emergency, by time you're up and operating, you might potentially have people needing to renew their CPR First Aid from January through August. Because if you think about people coming back in June, they're going to want to, those that if their training expires in August are going to want to do that as well, right? And you don't really have good mechanisms to know about their expiration date to even know like if these people can wait and kind of like say, let me get you in a July or August training, what have you, that they're going to all need it. And you're going to be trying to push through this whole group in 60 days. And I'm just kind of worried for you with doing that, because it could be potentially half of your workforce in your county that typically comes to you for first aid CPR can be coming through that time. Does that sound off, or does that sound like that can happen?
I think it would be a quarter because it's every 2 years.
Oh, good point. Good point. Yes.
Which is
okay, that sounds great.
I mean, we did 287 CPR certifications last quarter, so it's still a lot of people that need it at the last minute. But yeah, I share your concern.
Okay, and that's a lot of people to get in 60 days. So because you got that in, if that was a quarter, that was 3 months, right? So you'll have 2 months to get that amount in. So anyway, I just kind of wanted you to be thinking about that, because if you have all these people on hold who has already completed the online portion, what is your mechanism that you would use to schedule them for the hands-on portion? I'm not quite sure how each of you would envision that. You have a list of 280 people and you need to schedule them for the hands-on portion, and how would you do that? I don't have the ideas. I'm just kind of wondering if any of you have a way that you see yourself doing that.
This is Karen Prowl. I think for us, it's just going to be asking staff who have already worked like crazy through this event to work even more. We have quite a few staff who are trained to provide CPR classes. And so I think it's just going to be trying to figure out how we get multiple classes scheduled. The hands-on portion isn't an all-day event, so maybe setting up in different areas on a Saturday where people can come in shifts to get it done. I expect that if we talk to our teams about it, they'll come up with some creative solutions, but that's what I'm thinking right now.
Okay. And so
I don't know if it's a possibility to also, I mean, if we're all using Medic and we have multiple people to like send some of my trainers, I think I'll have 3, maybe 4 people trained that they could go and help in a particular area if they could get some, time and travel covered. I mean, that might be something for us to think about as a system, how we can be supportive in that way too.
Okay, that's a good point to think about, to put that out on the table as well. Yeah. So I think you're just going to need to be in touch with each other too about that as you're going along. Do you all know who does and does not have hybrid training? Are you aware of that? Okay. So maybe I'll send that other chart along with it as far as what we have learned. So that, because that might be some leveraging help, but what have you there. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was the temporary, okay, close on. The temporary online CPR First Aid process. We tried to kind of map this out for you, and I hope everybody had a chance to look at that, to say, you know, this is what OCCD is going to do, and this is how the CCR&Rs are going to operate with it. And then this is how, this is what the CCR&Rs will do during the state of emergency and after the state of emergency, how that works, and what the licensing specialists are going to do with looking for this information, and then how the early educators are going to work in that process. Did anybody have any concerns or any questions they had from the document? Okay. We just tried to kind of lay it out that you would kind of see that scope of that land. I do need to follow up with that DHS question though, for sure. I will do that soon. Let me get to here. Okay. Are there any other questions regarding this process that we didn't get to? Oh, look at that.
You already voiced it, Ronnie, but I think that the 60 days after the lifting of the state of emergency, getting all those providers through the hands-on component is definitely a concern, particularly when I think about probably for Carmen and Multnomah, and then for us in Washington County. It sounds like the R&Rs all use different entities for doing the hybrid, and I know that for the person that we use to contract with that, they book out. I'm just concerned about what's their availability going to be to provide the hands-on portion in that 60-day window, and how many people are we going to be able to get through. So you've already voiced that, but I just wanted to reiterate that's going to be something that'll be a concern and trying to navigate.
Right, and I think we had maybe touched upon this earlier. There was some concern that their early learning division was even allowing 60 days for this new rule after the state of emergency, because all the documents say after the state of emergency, these temporary rules are off. You know, it's like this is not the way you can operate. Everything, it's off, and except for this issue of the 60 days. So there's a lot of caution about that. You know, gosh, can you really say 60 days after? The governor says it's off. But so I didn't bring it up or push it because I didn't want to lose in 60 days. And it's like, well, that would be a mess. So I didn't go forward and say, I think we're going to need more than 60 days either. So I kind of thought that you already have a backlog list, right? I know Washington County has at least 40 people that are waiting for the class. We had Multnomah, I heard, had 150 that now are waiting for this to be over. So all of you already have a backlog now. And so at the end of this, when we know what the date of the end is, it might be really good to take an inventory and to kind of say, like, you know, get your plans in place and ready to roll out to enroll those folks right away. And if there's a problem, we're going to have to discuss that as a system, like Lynette was saying. We're going to have to try to discuss that as a system. But and I don't really know what the possibility of getting, you know, exceptions to this at such a high risk. It's a CPR First Aid. It could be a life, you know, at this point. So it's not like, okay, you'll have an extra week to get your menu posted. It's not one of those. So we need to, so we'll have to wait and see. So when we get the date that this is over, let's check back. Okay. Mary, I wanted to let you know that I had texted my friend that puts everything up on the website and told him about the Spanish document needing some help. And I haven't heard back from him yet, but we did put that in the works. I
Thank
also
you
have
very
some other
much,
questions.
Ronnie.
Sure. And we also have another question of, we're still, Andrew, do we really have to have the exact date to approve the online training? Okay, thank you, Christine. And also we need to follow up about if the CPRs need to continue to create waivers for the process for the exception for the CPR and first aid for the DHS. We'll have to follow that. I have to find out who's working with DHS. I gotta go. This is, yeah, I gotta, I say, who talks to them? Yes.
I'm pretty sure that it's not just DHS.
No, I don't know. If you're doing a waiver is different from an exception, and the exception is sort of a legal process that happens inside of licensing. That somebody says they can't do a rule, and there's a legal process around that. But if the waiver is saying that it's not available or it's not that, I will check up on it.
Okay.
So Ronnie,
and,
just an FYI. Yeah. I sent an email to DHS about something, well, about orientations yesterday. And part of the answer I got back is because we don't contract anymore directly with DHS, all decisions have to go through the ELD.
Okay. Oh, okay. So we might make that answer. Okay. I just need to find out who we that is answering that. Okay, but thanks for the heads up. You know, yeah, that's probably ringing true in some changes. I also did, you talked about the orientation. I'm just going to go off topic for a minute. I did get the packet for the DHS orientation because I wanted to look at that and the online training that OCCD has with the DHS provider, and I want to see what's the difference between those two things. And so I'm going to document that, and that's kind of like on my to-do.
So Ronnie, just an FYI, at this point, what we're hearing from providers is DPU is telling them that they are not getting an extension on their 90 days. And so this is kind of a big deal getting something for orientation, because we have people calling us on a daily basis freaking out because we can't provide anything and they're getting close to being failed.
Okay. But in the past, DHS has had the option of giving out the online orientation. And so, and my question is, where there is an online orientation, has it been updated? But in dire circumstances, like not to be publicly, broadcasted, but if they couldn't attend for some reason, they had the ability to give them an online orientation. So I'm just curious as to where that is, and can it be resurrected, or is it just so outdated that it would take more effort to do that than it's worth? And maybe an extension of more than 90 days is possible. I don't know.
Or just in lieu of that, you do the online portion, and then when it becomes available, you do the face-to-face. But I don't know. I'm not the one to speak to this. I guess it would be OCCD, but my hunch is that is not outdated. In fact, I think that this was created after the online portion was created. I don't, that's just my hunch, but I don't know if that's true. Kim, are you on? Okay, I'm not quite sure. Andrew, Sarah, what do you know?
Ronnie, I know that the online training that we've posted was created after the orientation.
Right.
But I do not know if it covers exactly everything that the orientation.
I don't.
But I do know the panel has been in discussion with DHS and has asked the question in the past, should it or does it? And we haven't really gotten an answer. So I'm glad that you're picking this up and that you're looking at the two and maybe.
Darn, does this mean I'm committed now?
It's recorded.
Okay. Yes, Kim? Is that Kim?
This is Jessica. What you're talking about is called the DHS Provider Requirements online training, and that is different than the orientation. It's still good information, but the orientation covers different information.
Okay, and I wanted to pick up those two side by side and kind of do the checklist and say, this covers this, and does this cover this as well? It gets 2 checks or it gets just 1 in 1 box. You know, did you guys all see that in your head like I saw it just now?
Ronnie, there was a packet that used to be able to go out for orientation that had a quiz with it. My understanding is that it's of a previous iteration of the orientation, but you might also be able to track that down to edit as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. And I probably should get off the phone with you guys before you give me any more work. So, okay, did we answer all your questions? Did we get everything that you had about that? Let's see. Okay, and Carmen, I got your question. Okay, I'll look into that. Okay, Kim is having technical difficulties. And, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Kim, how frustrating. Okay, is there anything that we need? Yes.
This is Sarah. Can I just make a couple of general registry announcements while I have everybody on?
Okay, and just know that not every SDA is here, because those that didn't have the hybrid didn't come in, and I think we have 5 of those.
Yeah, it's nothing big. I just want to give you some FYI about people working remotely from OCCD. So we are highly encouraging uploads. So if you're talking with anybody who's submitting trainings and their education, please encourage them to upload it. That would be very helpful for us right now. We are still business as usual with our STEP applications and our education awards. The only thing that I want to highlight is if somebody is awarded their STEP, we don't have the capacity to mail the certificates right now. Everything's updated in their ORO account. So please encourage people, if they're saying, hey, I wonder if I got my STEP, I haven't received anything yet, please encourage them to log into ORO and take a peek, because it's likely that they have. And that being said, we're still at about a 30-day turnaround for the steps right now. So there shouldn't be a delay over the 45 days for those. And then the one big thing I want to let you know, so being at PSU, we partner with the business office to process education award payments. They currently have a pause on issuing paper checks until they're back into the office. So highly encourage people to fill out the direct deposit, because that is the quickest way to get their money right now. Does anybody have questions about any of that? Okay. On the education award piece, they will get a paper check. It just might be delayed a little bit until people are back in the office processing paperwork the way they usually would. But other than that, everything's rocking and rolling as usual.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna, we need to get that out to everybody. Everybody, thank you so much for playing. I really appreciate it. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna come back together and find out just how big of a trouble you're in at the end of this. So it's like, I'm just worried about it.
On your questions that you can't answer, number 4, it's extension for orientations for their 90-day. Just so that you know what you were referring to.
Okay, thank you. Do you think I have too many question marks there?
No, that's perfect.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, everybody, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Everybody have a good day. Thank you, Andrew and OCCD staff. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.